Welcome to the Brews and Appraisal Views podcast, where we blend the art of appraising with a touch of insight and a dash of humor. Whether you're a trainee, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the appraisal world, you've come to the right place. So grab your favorite brew, relax, and join us for some expert tips, real-world stories, and valuable advice to help grow your appraisal business. I'm your host, Dan Lindeman, certified appraiser serving South Florida for over 20 years. Hey, welcome back, appraisers. Today we're joined by Tim Anderson. Tim is a real estate appraisal consultant. He's a mentor, a writer, a podcaster, thought leader, and number one, the appraiser's advocate. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Dan, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. As always, my best to you and your family.
Oh, thank you, sir. Same to you. So I was recently at a 3-hour Florida law education with Tim, and it reminded me that I needed to have one of my reports reviewed by Tim, which is a service he does for appraisers. And that's why I brought him on today. I wanted to kind of go through a review that he did for me and kind of what he can do for you to help you grow and encourage you as an appraiser, because I know it's super beneficial reading his review of my report. And I know there's some things I'm going to change. So I was very appreciative of it. So Tim, tell me about the process for the appraisal review.
Dan, thank you. A lot of times I don't hear from appraisers until they get that letter from the state or the letter from Fannie Mae or the letter from the attorney. And I'm kind of like the doctor. I would prefer you come in before you're sick. Although if you are sick, come in. I'll do what I can to help you. But for example, in your situation, we were at the meeting and which you managed to last through 3 hours of Florida law. And if there's anything duller than 3 hours of Florida law, I don't know what it is. But you came up to me afterward and asked if I would review one of your reports, and you sent it to me. And most people look at a review as roughly the equivalent of having a nail driven through your thumb. And it needn't be. In fact, the review concept is there in order for a peer to help an appraiser engage in a more complete appraisal and then write a more understandable report. That's the original reason for a review. Somehow, somewhere along the line, it got turned into a gotcha. And which is just terrible because it's meant to help. So as a result, what I try to do when I review a report is to help. Now, are all reports written equally? No, but that's not the point. The point is, what is there to work with? What's the base? And then you work with the base. You say, okay, well, this is well done. This is well developed. This is properly analyzed. Now let's take a look at some of the ramifications of these analysis. Now, as we talk about this, please understand that out of confidentiality, I'm not referring to your report, even though you have given me permission to do so. I'm not going to do that. But let's talk about some of the things that we find. I was working with a fellow literally this morning. We're recording this in early June of 26. Was working with him literally this morning, a letter from Fannie Mae. And basically the letter said, look, we got no problem with your value. It just, you didn't explain to us very well how you got it. So that was the issue. Fannie Mae wasn't worried about the number. It was just unclear how the appraiser got there. For example, and I'm glossing over some of this, the appraiser said, well, I adjusted the GLA at $75 a square foot. Okay, why? And he said, what do you mean, why? Well, why not 83? Why not 68? Why $85 a square foot? Well, and this was one of the problems that the appraiser had with Fannie Mae, because his original answer was, well, that's the way I always do it.
Oh boy, that's not a good response.
That's not the answer.
Or based on my experience.
That's not the answer. It may be what you do, but it's not the answer to the question. So what it really comes down, Dan, to this. Before we make an adjustment, making an adjustment is step two. Step one is, what market evidence is there that I need to make an adjustment? Now, if you're appraising a 1,200 square foot house, you might adjust for 100 square feet. Whereas if you're appraising a 15,000 square foot house, you might not adjust for a 5,000 square foot difference unless and until the market says, yes, you will. We're not going to get into the math behind that. We could another time if you want to. But we don't make an adjustment simply because there is a difference. Now, our good friends at the AMCs will begin poking their eyeballs out about when they hear this. But just because there's a difference doesn't mean an adjustment doesn't mean that difference merits an adjustment. The market has to say, yeah, there's an adjustment. And okay, and the second question is, okay, well, how much? Right. Well, 65, 85, 93, 127. What is it?
And it kind of doesn't matter, I guess, whether you make an adjustment or not. I guess at the end of the day, you still need to explain why you didn't make the adjustment, and then why you made the adjustment, and how you came, and the methods behind that adjustment. Because I was clear in the report you sent me, is like, I didn't make that. I didn't say why I made the adjustment and the source I used for it.
Mm-hmm. So again, you chose to give that up. I didn't give up that.
Oh no, yeah. For the record, everybody, Tim told me he didn't want to disclose anything confidential. There's nothing confidential in the notes he gave me to the public. I don't mind, but no, he doesn't share confidential information with anybody else. But I gave him my express permission to. So this is not norm for the course. I thought it'd be valuable for the listeners.
Okay, thank you. And we know what we're thinking. You know, we've looked at the property or driven past it, or maybe not, but we've looked at the maps and we've looked at the pictures and we've probably talked to the broker. So we're getting a pretty good idea of it. But are we able to communicate that idea clearly, concisely, and consistently? And in many cases, unfortunately, the answer is no. Again, we're recording this in 2026. About 2 weeks ago, I reviewed an appraisal report that mentioned departure. Now, for those of you who are brand new in appraisal, you don't even know what departure is, and good for you. It was stupid. But the thing is, departure went away in 2006, 20 years ago. But yet a mention of departure was still in this appraiser's report.
In the template. Yeah, the template probably buried in there somewhere.
Yeah. And when I asked about it, the appraiser looked at it and said, I don't know. I don't read this stuff. Oh, okay. There's another answer you don't give to the state. Yeah. But we have to be able to explain what it is we did and why we did it. You know, you're a kid and your mom walks home unexpectedly and your hand's in the cookie jar and you got chocolate all over your mouth. You can't say, no, Mom, I haven't had any cookies, because it's obvious you have. So what you've got to do is you got to make up an excuse that you knew aliens were about to attack, and the only thing that would keep you safe from them was chocolate. Okay, it might work because it's Mom, but we've got to have a reason. And way too often we don't. We explain that, but we do not explain how or why.
So, regarding the templates and stuff, there's a lot of redundancy. After reading through mine, that I found a lot of redundancy that was pointed out. Like, I don't need to be mentioning hypothetical conditions and extraordinary assumptions like twice within the report. That doesn't make any sense. But I was doing that, and it was part of my template, which I never changed. So that was my recommendation for other appraisers out there. Go through your template, just read it through again, see what needs to be changed. If you're using a pre-printed form, a lot of the stuff you're putting in your template is already on that pre-printed form, so you don't need to mention it again unless it's relevant somehow. What else did I want to say? Oh, regarding Fannie Mae, I got a love letter a couple of months ago as well because I had an old template I was using, and it mentioned something that was really predominant in the area was Chinese drywall at the time, but it was in just this one template I was using, and they said no, you can't, you shouldn't be using that anymore. If it's an issue now, mention it or whatever, but that it's a comment shouldn't be in the reports. And I agreed with them, and I was lazy and didn't catch it in my templates.
That's not then that's not a fault. I mean, the state is not going to sanction you for something like that, but it raises quality control issues in the 1004 form and eventually in the 3.6 form. There's going to be pretty much a boilerplate scope of work. Okay, it's wrong, but okay. The point is, a lot of appraisers will add scope of work. But the issue is in adding scope of work, they're different. The two of them are different. So that raises the question, okay, which one's right? They both can be because they're different.
Interesting.
And that raises the issue of misrepresentation, which raises the issue of the ethics rule, among other things. And while states are very willing to not overlook, but let's just say offer counsel over a technical error, when it comes to ethical lapses, that's when they tend to sit up and pay attention. So look at your template. If you've got scope of work in there that's pre-printed from your software provider, but then you've added another one, if they're different, one of them's wrong. And if the boilerplate that's already there does a pretty good job of explaining what you did and didn't do, then you don't need two of them. And if it doesn't need, if the boilerplate does not explain the quality of your research and analyses, and you want to add more scope of work, that's perfectly fine. Just say, this is in addition to what's already there, and then make sure there's nothing in the second one to contradict the first one.
Sure. In that general, the lending form, I haven't taken a look at it, but I'm sure it lists exactly everything you need to do: inspecting the subject, inspecting the comparables, all that good stuff. And on the general purpose form, it just says it's specific to each client, so you need your scope of work there on the general purpose form.
Mm-hmm. And remember, scope of work is not, I went to the house, I flushed the toilets, I turned the lights on and off, I petted the dog. That's not scope of work. That's inspection. By definition, scope of work is the extent of research and analyses you go to form your value conclusion. So you need to tell the client what you did from a research and analysis standpoint, not solely from an inspection standpoint.
Okay. Part of I'm looking at my scope of work right now. I don't know if you called out my scope of work. I don't know. Because I list what I do, but then I do say I analyze the neighborhood and stuff like that. Okay, so I go through it. Mine looks pretty good. All right, good.
Just as long as there's nothing contradictory between the boilerplate and what you add.
I have another follow-up question about the scope of work. The appraiser determines the scope of work, correct? Along with the client's needs.
The client suggests, but the appraiser decides, yes.
Okay, excellent. I was just recently doing an appraisal or having a discussion with another appraiser, and they were talking about the need to maybe drive the comparables. And if you didn't drive the comparables, that you may get dinged by the state or something along those lines. And I was looking through the scope of work. My scope of work doesn't even mention anything about driving the comparables, and I didn't see anything in USPAP saying that. So is there something out there for non-lending work that says you must drive the comparables or take pictures of the comparables?
Absolutely not. In USPAP, absolutely not. All USPAP says is make it clear what you did and didn't do. So if you didn't drive the comp, say I didn't drive the comps. This is the desktop. And the
Right.
desktop appraisal form is already written so that that's clear. But if you were using a GPAR form and you chose not to inspect the comps, and that was not a client requirement, no, USPAP has no photography or inspection standards. Fannie Mae, the Fannie Mae Sales Guide, but in fact, all the GSEs require photos, but not necessarily that you take them. They require you to drive by and look at the property, but you could hire somebody to go behind you and take pictures.
Right.
Most appraisers don't. I mean, you're standing in front of the house, take the damn picture. But you don't have to. It's got to be in the report, but your assistant can do that. Your secretary can do that.
Do you think let's just go back to a non-lending purpose. Do you think, well, one, clients give you very little scope of work. They say, okay, I need an appraisal for a estate as of this date, date of death. And basically that's all they say. That's been my experience. Or I'm going through a divorce. I need the current value of the property. Basically that's it. And then everything else, I need to figure out who the intended user, the attorney is, whether they're the client, intended user, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But one thing is they never say like, hey, you need to drive the comparables. Like that's not even a question that an assignment condition that a private client ever throws out to me.
No.
Would that diminish me do you think that would diminish my appraisal versus somebody else who drove the comparables in court? Let's say there's two appraisers against each other.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, I sit here in my studio and I live right now less than a mile away than the house we lived in when I moved here when I was 16 years old. And you can tell I'm older than 16.
Just a little.
I pretty much know what's going on. Now, if the client did not specifically request a drive-by, then that becomes your scope of work. Do you think you need to? Now, if it's a 75-year-old subdivision and you used to play basketball in the driveway with some of the kids that used to live there, you probably don't need to drive by because you probably know the neighborhood. Whereas if it's brand new, you may want to drive by to get the flavor of what's going on. New construction, if the houses are 15 years old, do you notice some construction company dumpsters in the driveway because people are, redoing the inside, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But without specific instructions to drive by, USPAP has no inspection standard. Therefore, as long as you disclose it, you don't have to inspect it. If you're more comfortable driving by, taking pictures, maybe even knocking on the door, say, can I take a picture of your backyard? It probably won't let you, but
yeah.
But especially in South Florida, they'll just shoot you.
Yeah.
But if that's what makes you comfortable, then go ahead and do it. But short of the client saying you will inspect the property, you have no ethical responsibility. You have no legal responsibility, no ethical responsibility. Excuse me, let me rephrase. You have no legal responsibility. The only ethical responsibility that you have is basically to yourself in order to come up with a value opinion that you conclude is credible. Do you need to stand in the street and stare at the house? If you do it. If you don't.
Right. And I suppose if you're not familiar with the neighborhood, then you best be driving through that neighborhood to figure out what's going on, because that's got to be linked to competency that you.
Yes.
So, like, I would agree with you. Like, my neighborhood, I come in and out of here 1,000 times a year. So I know everything that's going on in this neighborhood. I know my county. I know most of the surrounding areas. So I guess I guess it all depends. If you should go, if you want to inspect or not.
Right. Again, short of the direct instruction to go stare at the house, you have no requirement to do so.
Got it. All right, we went off on a little tangent. What else did I want to bring up about this analysis? So, did you look at a work file as well? Do you look at the work file as well? Do you see if it's complete? And
You forwarded a copy of your work file. I looked at it superficially because I was a lot more interested in how you interpreted the work file rather than what you chose to put in it. The stuff that I looked at was fine. A lot of the stuff I said in there about please explain how you derived this was in the work file. I mean, you had it.
yeah,
So it was just a matter of going back and adding a few paragraphs here and there, saying, I made the GLA adjustment at $75 a square foot because I compared sales A and G and got $75 a square foot.
yeah. And I kind of source where I get my adjustment support from, because I'm a user of Spark or Synapse, whatever the adjustment was. I think it's Synapse. And it gives several different methods I use, but I don't make that connection in my report. I'd say a $75 per square foot adjustment was warranted on comparables 1 and 3. And then down below, I said the appraiser uses the following methods to determine adjustments. So I don't necessarily connect the dot. I say, okay, now you can go down further. You can figure out how you got the adjustment by maybe one of these methods. And that's just me maybe not taking enough time to make that connection directly to that one adjustment.
On 3.6, that's not going to be quite so easy because of the way it's set up. I would recommend that when you say I adjusted at $75 a square foot because Spark and Synapse and Solomon and Fred the neighbor and Jane, the lady who cuts my hair, said I should use $75 a square foot. Yeah, okay.
Got it. So in your work file, for my subject property, I always have like the tax card, the sketch, any available MLS listings, photographs, maybe permits if they're there, and I save it to as a subject page. And they're all PDF. It's all digital work file, so it's all a PDF. Right. And then I do the same thing for each comparable. Well, I don't do it; my system does it. But is there any guideline for what should be in the work file? Do I need to include that for everything? Every comparable, every subject, have all that information together to recreate the report?
All right. This is a gray area. A USPAP has 4 bullet points of what you're supposed to include in your work file. And the fourth one says everything. Your 3rd grade math teacher's name, put that in the work file if she taught you how to do fractions. But the point is, state law, Florida state law, I'm referring to Florida, I don't know any other states, is more specific. And about 2 years ago, I was involved with a case. An appraiser was accused of icky poo things. And the state said, send us your work file. So he sent the work file with a note that says, I wrote this appraisal report on the client's website, and the report is resident on the client's website. I can't get you a copy of it right now because their website is down. When I can get you a copy of it, I will send you a copy. So it's not like he was trying to avoid the issue. And USPAP does say it doesn't care where you store the property, where you store the data, just as long as you can get at it. But the state of Florida said, no, you got to have a copy of everything, always, forever and ever, hallelujah, amen, in your work file. And they nicked him hard, even though it was technically not his fault because the client's server was down. But the state said, no, our statute says you will have a copy, a true copy of the appraisal report in your work file, period.
All right. So was that through some management company or something where it saves the report that they do, some sort of desktop product, something like that? Because what scenario would that be in? Like,
Well, again, if you're going to do that, and a lot of lenders, a lot of AMCs do that, make sure you've got a copy of it in your work file, even if you have to copy it page by page.
right.
Because, and again, I can speak only for Florida, but if you don't have it, then you're going to get nicked. Now, how bad is it going to be? Well, that's going to depend on numerous variables. We're not going to go in here. It might just be a letter of counsel. This particular appraiser was nicked pretty hard. But
what's pretty hard? A suspension, a big fine?
No. But let's just say that it could have made a nice down payment on a really good used car for the amount of money the state fined him.
So yeah, years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I got reached out to by one of the state's auditors, or I don't know who they were, but they asked for a copy of one of my work files. They were like, it was a legitimate reach out. And I said, oh, did somebody file a complaint against my report or something like that? And they said, no, we're investigating like a lender or something like that. And it was on a job that I did like maybe 2 weeks ago. It was a lending job, and they just reached out for my work file. That's the only time I've ever had to supply a work file to the state. And I have no idea. I still to this day have no idea why they wanted it or what happened, but there's nothing that's ever happened from it. That was in the day of faxing stuff.
That, in fact, boy, you just dated yourself then. Of course, I remember when I started out appraising, you rolled it into a typewriter. Well, that's how long I've been doing it. The state has the right to audit you, but typically they don't. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the time. They don't have the money, but they have the right.
Yeah, it had to be some investigator, because that is a super quick turnaround time, like a couple of weeks after a job's done to get contacted. So had to be a lot more going on.
Oh, there was a lot.
That just reminded me of it. I totally forgot about it.
There was a lot more to it, but you were not central to the issue.
Good. I like it that way. All right, Tim. So for this, I don't know if you want to share a general idea of how you charge appraisers for this, what it would cost them. I don't know what you want to share, but I found it to be very, very reasonable expense and really well worth it to have another set of eyes on my reports.
Mm-hmm. Dan, it's a service I provide. It's a service I enjoy providing. I do charge for it. I try to be reasonable in my fees. I will charge one fee to just review one report. Or if someone wanted to enter into a tutoring situation or a mentoring situation, not a supervisor, but a mentoring situation, I would charge for that, but I would charge less than my standard hourly consulting fee.
Okay.
I do I did expert witness work. I don't now because I'm retired, but I still consult with attorneys. And because it's an attorney, when it's an attorney, I charge for it. I have no sympathy on attorney.
Probably double the hourly rate that you charged me.
A little more, but
sure.
more. But no, when I'm working with my fellow appraisers, I try to be a lot more reasonable is the wrong word, but let's say understanding. Yeah.
But I found it to be very reasonable, and it was a worthwhile expense. Basically, it's going to cost you half an appraisal, maybe more. Who the heck knows what you're charging? But it was really worthwhile. Any other tips from appraisers on anything they should be doing differently with their work files, their reports? What's the most important thing in the review, basically, that they need to take a second look at?
Okay. When it comes to the work file, again, it is a gray area. There's no way around that. So basically, the question you need to ask yourself is, could I take my work file, not take out my appraisal? Could I take my work file, give it to you, Dan, have you appraise the property, and from what's in nothing more than the work file. You don't get to make any phone calls. You don't drive by the property. You don't do anything. The only ammo you have is the work file. Could you appraise the property? Now, I'm not saying for the same thing. That's not the point. But could you, taking this appraiser's work file only, could you appraise the property? In other words, you don't have to say, well, how big is it? Or, well, does it have a crawl space or a concrete slab or what's it got? That's all there. You could appraise the property from nothing more than what's in the work file. Then your work file is complete. Right. Whereas if you had to call up the appraiser or somebody and say, well, this doesn't make any sense. Did you include the shed in the backyard as personal property, or did you include it as real property? If that's unclear based on the data in the work file, then the work file is probably incomplete. Now, there are big incompletes and there are small incompletes, but we're just looking at the word incomplete in an absolute sense. In that case, the work file would be incomplete. From a standpoint of writing, I'm a big proponent of AI. What you have in front of you is my notes, my thoughts, legal pad stuff that I keep, but then I run all that stuff through AI and say, here, please make this make sense. Right. Rather than expose that I'm a complete moron when it comes to the English language. And it does so. It does so very nicely, and it does very quickly. So right. I'm a great supporter of AI, not to replace the appraiser, but to complement, enhance the appraiser. And that and a knowledge of an intermediate level knowledge of basic statistics are wonderful attributes. Is when you come to understand statistics, you come to realize what the market's telling you, but you don't know how to interpret what the market's telling you until you have an intermediate knowledge of stats. And then you come to understand that adjustments are neither that hard nor that important, because you're letting the market tell you what the property is worth. But that's the subject of another podcast.
Understood. So I did want to mention, I didn't pick my best appraisal to send it to him. I just picked a random single family appraisal that was in. I picked it at random and sent it to him because I didn't want to send him I didn't want to cherry pick what I sent him. So that's my advice to the appraisers out there. Just choose something at random and have Tim take a look at it, because that's more good sample. That's a sample of your work right there at random.
I typically ask appraisers to send me two reports. One that they're just proud of, that they want to frame, that they want to put in a time capsule so their grandkids can see it, and one that they wish would just go away quietly and die.
Yeah, I've had some of those ugly ones, and I'll be honest, like a lot of my stuff's non-lender stuff, and I'll be perfectly frank. I just did one for an agent, and it looked really bad. It was like a really wide range, and value. The adjusted sale price was a wide range of value, and it had so many. It looked ugly, and I was honest with him. I said, "Hey, this was a hard appraisal, and the appraisal kind of looks a little ugly, but here at the end of the day, this is what I think it's worth, and this is why I think it's worth it." Just, if you've seen a lot of appraisals, this one looks like a lot of stuff going on.
Well, Dan, it's interesting you raised that concept, because appraisers seem to have this predetermined idea that the appraisal must make the angels sing. And let's face it, there are some properties out there, they're just dumpsters, or they're going to be very difficult to appraise because they're, one-off, they're one of a kind, and there are no comps. Right. And it's perfectly okay to say, client, I've thrown my chicken bones and I've checked my snake entrails and I called 47 people and I haven't slept more than 4 hours in the last 6 nights worrying about this thing. And I just can't get it any closer here. This is the best I can do.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. In fact, that's an honesty and a candor that many clients will appreciate. They would rather you say, "Oh yeah, this dude's a dumpster," and I had a devil of a time doing it, than come in and say, "Oh yeah, I just tossed this one off while I was playing pickleball," because you didn't. Yeah, so
That's
tell
true.
the truth.
Yeah. So I was really honest with them. I can't wait to see what happens because it was for pre-listing purposes. We'll see what they end up choosing to list it for, and then what it ultimately sells for, and see how close it was. Because a lot of times I give on listing stuff specifically, I always give a range of value too, which is basically my adjusted sale price range, maybe a little narrower or something. Because that helps them tremendously, because I'm not an oracle. I don't know where it's going to sell. It's just going to sell somewhere in this range, I think.
That's what we should do, because again, I raised the issue of statistics. The part of statistics is coming up with the confidence factor, and you say, well, I'm 95% sure it's worth $300,000 plus or minus 5%. That's what we ought to say. But when we say, oh yes, it's worth $302,512, that's crap.
So that reminds me of something that just happened recently. I did an appraisal. I was the third appraiser to appraise this property. And I think I appraised it for maybe $790,000. And it was for a divorce case. The gentleman called me afterwards. He's like, I am really upset. You're really high. He's like, I just had 2 appraisals done around the same time period. One was at 775, one was at 780, and you're at 790. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, it's a miracle 3 appraisers came in with that small range. He's like, but that's important to me, that money. I'm like, but that's a miracle we all came within that range.
Yeah, it's not your job to help the guy end up with as much money at the closing table as possible. It's your job to issue an opinion of market value.
Yeah, and a lot you do get caught with that, sometimes wanting to like win on a case or something like that, but it's not about winning and losing. It's like all you're doing is just defending the property. That's your only job. So I know a lot of appraisers say, oh yeah, I won that case or whatever, but maybe it worked out in their client's favor. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're just defending.
You're an ER doctor, and somebody comes in with horrible knife wounds and a gunshot and a broken arm. It's not your fault. It's not your problem that guy was involved in a drug deal that went bad. It's your job to heal a hurting human being. So our job is to provide a value opinion. What somebody does with it, what somebody thinks of it, is not our problem.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if it is their problem, you need to explain what you did and how you did it to them, just so they can understand it. So just offer that to them. They may disagree, but at the end of the day, it's all you can do is explain your point of view, and that's what you need to leave it at.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't hit decline. Don't hit delete on the emails. Respond to the people who have complaints, because you're going to get them. Like some weeks are way worse than others. Like I may get like 2 or 3 people really pissed about my values that I need to address it with. Then I can go 2 months without hearing from anybody. And then some positive stuff along the way too. Like, oh, thanks for that value or whatever. I'm like, great.
If we're not pissing folks off, we're not doing our jobs.
Amen. All right, Tim. I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to go over. Tell the appraisers out there how they can get in touch with you and how this process works to get it started. And then we'll close out, and then I'm going to keep you on for some bonus content for some of the referral network members.
That's fine. Dan, to get in touch with me, my email address is tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. And then I work with students or appraisers who are up before their states, who don't want to go up before their states, who get love letters from Fannie Mae, who are defendants in court cases. And what I do is I go over the reports and from a standpoint of USPAP, and from a standpoint of internal consistency, logic, reasoning, and say, here are the good parts, here are the parts that need work. And when I'm working with appraisers who are going up before their states, the state says, oh, well, we want your license, we want your house, we want your car, we want your dog, and then we'll get serious about the penalties. But usually with proper legal counsel, and then with an explanation to the state of what the appraiser did, even if it was improper, but a clear explanation, then it just goes down, well, okay, we'll give you a fine. So the many states, Florida is not one of them, but many states basically say, okay, you've been charged with this, and just send us your license and everybody will go home. Well, okay, send them your license and everybody will go home. But that's why you get an attorney who can start the horse trading. And because the attorney doesn't know anything about real estate or real estate appraisal, that's why they need somebody like a USPAP instructor who can explain the ins and outs of appraisal to them so that they can use that to defend their clients.
Nice. All right. On that note, Tim, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And appraisers, I'm going to catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us on the Brews and Appraisal Views podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found some value in it, which you can apply to your appraisal business. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us reach more appraisers like you. For more tips and to connect with other appraisers, visit referappraisals.com. Until next time, keep brewing up success in your business, and I'll catch you on the next episode. That was excellent, Tim.